was in internship and preparing for the entrance, my sister, who is a year older to me, had topped in every possible PG entrance exam that year. And I told her that give me just one secret and only in one line. I do not want the complete topper interview. Just tell me in one line, what is the secret of topping? What is the secret of getting through? And she told me that if you do not remember, if you cannot apply what you already know, then what is the fun in trying to gain what you do not know? And that holds true for every aspect of your life. So if you are giving a lot of time in studying, and if you're not taking out any time for revision, you're not using what you already know. Only when you revise, only when you use it, only when you make things practical, you remember it. So if you're not using it, if you're not giving grand test, if you're not revising, then believe me, all the time that you have used in learning the things that you have learned till now, you have wasted the time if you do not remember. So make sure that what you already have studied, you remember each and every bit of it. And you know how to do it. Yes, give test, go to postings. When you go to the postings, use it. Even when you're not going to the postings, see how, if the patient comes, you are going to use it, how you're going to apply it. So with that, we start with the anatomy of the pharynx. Now, before we start with the anatomy of the pharynx, let us quickly see something which is very, very commonly asked in our exams, and that is the development of the tongue and the clinical significance of that. So now, let us quickly start. Now, from the first arch develop 3 mesodermal thickenings. These are known as the tuberculum impar, and behind them is the hypobrachial eminence, right? Now, these 3 fuse to form the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. So, we will write down what is important and what we are supposed to know, right? So these 3 swellings, the 2 lingual swellings and the tuberculum impar, the 2 lingual swellings and the tuberculum impar plus tuberculum impar, this is from the first arch, right? This is from the first arch, and this leads to the formation of the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, right? Now, the second arch does not contribute to the formation of the tongue. From the midline of the third and the fourth arch develops another midline mesodermal thickening. This is what is known as hypobrachial eminence. This hypobrachial eminence divides into 2 parts, a cranial part and a caudal part. So the cranial part leads to the formation of the anterior part of the posterior 1/3. Anterior 2/3 of the tongue we know is from the first arch. What is left is posterior 1/3 of the tongue. So posterior 1/3 of the tongue, anterior part will be formed by the cranial part of the hypobrachial eminence, and the posterior part will be formed by the caudal part of the hypobrachial eminence, which means that this hypobrachial eminence cranial part is from which arch? From third arch, whereas the caudal part, this is from the fourth arch. Right? This will lead to the formation of posterior 1/3 anterior part, and this will lead to the formation of posterior 1/3 posterior most part. And along with the posterior most part of the tongue, the hypobrachial eminence also leads to the formation of the caudal most part of the hypobrachial eminence, which is from the fourth arch. This also leads to the formation of the epiglottis. Now, this is what I am telling you here itself. We'll do it again in the larynx, but yes, this is the question that is asked from you. Posterior most part of the tongue is from. Sometimes instead of giving in the choice fourth arch, what they give is hypobrachial eminence. So yes, we need to know that the hypobrachial eminence, the cranial has a cranial part and a caudal part. So yes, the caudal part is from the fourth arch, and that leads to the formation of the posterior most part of the tongue along with the epiglottis. So epiglottis is also from the fourth arch, that is from the posterior most part of the hypobrachial eminence. Yes, from the caudal part of hypobrachial eminence. So ultimately what we need to know is that anterior 2/3 of the tongue develops from the first arch. Always remember that. Yes, the second arch does not contribute to the formation of the tongue. Why? Because the third arch overgrows the second arch. The posterior 1/3 of the tongue is also known as the base of tongue. The base of tongue mainly develops from the third arch. Can you see how much is from the third arch? Yes, so mainly it is from the third arch, and posterior most part of the tongue is from the fourth arch. Yes, hence is also the nerve supply of the tongue. Hence is the sensory nerve supply of the tongue. Where the tongue is derived from the first arch, the nerve supply, the sensory nerve supply is also from the first arch nerve. Which part is derived from the third arch is from the third arch nerve. So now quickly can you tell me that anterior two-third of the tongue is from which arch? Yes, from first arch. So the sensory nerve supply of the anterior two-third of the tongue is from which nerve? Did I hear cauda tympani? Is cauda tympani for sensation? No, that is for taste. We are talking about the sensory nerve supply. Yes, the anterior two-third of the tongue is from the first arch. What is the first arch nerve? First arch nerve is, yes, the mandibular. So we have the lingual branch of mandibular which gives the sensory supply to the anterior two-third of the tongue. So this is by the lingual branch of mandibular. Lingual branch of mandibular. Mandibular. Yes. Now, in the posterior part of the tongue, the part that is derived from the third arch, that will be supplied by the third arch nerve. So can you tell me what is the third arch nerve? Yes, the glossopharyngeal. Whereas the posterior most part of the tongue which is derived from the fourth arch will be supplied by the fourth arch nerve. So tell me quickly, which is that? Yes, that is the vagus. That is the 10th nerve. Right? Now the tongue also has another important function. What is that function? Yes, that is the function for taste. Yes, when you are having coffee, you sense whether it is hot or cold, and you also sense whether it is bitter, whether it is sweet. Yes, so hot and cold, if it is from the anterior two-third of the tongue, it is through which nerve? Yes, that is through the lingual. That is the sensation. But the taste, whether it is bitter, whether it is sweet, that is not through the lingual. So the taste is another function of the tongue. And what are the nerves for the taste? Now in the posterior one-third of the tongue, that is in the base of tongue, where the ninth nerve gives the sensation, the ninth nerve is also for taste. Yes, so ninth nerve is complete for the taste as well as for sensation. Yes, taste plus sensation. Plus sensation. Same posterior most part of the tongue where it is supplied by the 10th nerve. That 10th nerve is for the complete supply for taste as well as for sensation. This also is same. Whereas in the anterior two-third of the tongue, there is a difference. The nerve for sensation as well as the nerve for taste is different. Yes, the sensory is the lingual, whereas for taste, we have cauda tympani. So for taste, we have cauda tympani. We have cauda tympani. So now you must be thinking that anterior two-third of the tongue is derived from the first arch. How come it is supplied by a second arch nerve? Cauda tympani is a branch of facial. Facial is the nerve of second arch. Quickly, can you tell me all the arches nerves? Yes, the first arch nerve is mandibular. Second arch is facial. Third arch is, yes, the glossopharyngeal. Fourth and sixth. Fifth arch disappears. Fourth and sixth both is vagus. Yes, we know that. So now the second arch nerve, how is it supplying a first arch derivative? Yes, so yes, the cauda tympani is a branch of the facial. Facial is the nerve of the second arch, but cauda tympani is considered to be a first arch nerve. Why it is considered to be? It is considered to be a pretraumatic nerve of the first arch. Now, what is pretraumatic nerve now? So now every arch has a main nerve of that particular arch. Main nerve of first arch is mandibular. Main nerve of second arch is facial. Main nerve of third arch is glossopharyngeal. Now from the next respective arch, one branch comes to the previous arch. For example, from the second arch nerve, one branch will come to the first arch, and that is the cauda tympani. So cauda tympani will now be considered as a pretraumatic nerve of the first arch. Is that clear? So that is why it supplies the first arch derivative, that is the anterior two-third of the tongue. So now what we know is that the sensory nerve supply of the tongue, the sensory nerve supply, anterior two-third is anterior two-third, which is from the first arch, is by the lingual, and the taste here is by cauda tympani. The posterior one-third of the tongue is by glossopharyngeal, that is both the taste as well as sensation, and posterior most part of the tongue, again the taste as well as sensation is by the 10th nerve. Is that clear? So we know the sensation as well as we know the nerve for the taste. Now coming to the muscles of the tongue. Are the muscles of the tongue also derived from the same? No. The muscles of the tongue are derived from occipital somites, from occipital myotomes, and each and every point of this has been a question of your exam. So yes, the muscles of the tongue are derived from occipital somites. Occipital somites or occipital myotomes. myotomes. Yes. So the motor nerve supply of the tongue is the hypoglossal. So yes, all the muscles of the tongue are supplied by the hypoglossal nerve except for one. And yes, what is that? That is the palatoglossus. The palatoglossus comes from the palate to the tongue, and it is not supplied by the hypoglossal. It is supplied by the pharyngeal plexus. Which supplies most of the muscles, almost all the muscles of the palate. Which one is not, that we'll see later on. Now here in the tongue, this is the anterior 2/3, right? And this here is the posterior 1/3. Now this division occurs by a line which is known as sulcus terminalis. Can you see this line? Now just anterior to the sulcus terminalis are huge papillae. These papillae, are you able to see it? Yes, so these papillae are known as circumvallae papillae. So now the circumvallae papillae are lying in which part? Yes, in the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Can you quickly tell me the circumvallae papillae will be supplied by which nerve? Yes, our normal reflexes, it is in the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. So it will be by the lingual. No, it is not by the lingual. It is by glossopharyngeal. So both these questions are asked in your exams, that the circumvallae papillae lies in which part? Yes, just anterior to the sulcus terminalis. But it is supplied by which nerve? By the glossopharyngeal nerve. It is supplied by glossopharyngeal. Okay, so now quickly tell me, in this part of the tongue, the sensation will be by lingual, yes, and the taste will be by chorda tympani. This will be supplied by, what is this? Circumvallae papillae. This will be supplied by glossopharyngeal, yes. And this part of the tongue, this part, yes, that will be by the glossopharyngeal. Now we know the nerve supply of the tongue. We know everything about the tongue. We know the sensory nerve supply. We know the taste. We know the muscles are from which nerve. They are derived from what, and they are supplied by which nerve. Now we also know the nerve supply of the ear already. We have done it already, yes, in the ear. Now what you are going to tell me is that from which part of the tongue can pain be referred to the ear? Which part of the tongue can pain be referred to the ear? Okay, so for simplification, yes, this is the picture in front of you. Just think and tell me that can pain from here, from this part, yes, second arch does not contribute. So from this part, can pain go to the ear? Yes or no? Yes or no? This is by which nerve? Glossopharyngeal. Does the glossopharyngeal also supply the ear? Yes or no? Yes. So yes, the pain can go from this part to the ear through which nerve? Through the glossopharyngeal nerve. Can pain from here also go to the ear? Fourth nerve, vagus. Does the vagus supply the ear? Yes, it does supply the ear. So pain from here also can go to the ear through which nerve? Yes, through the vagus nerve. What is the branch of vagus that supplies the ear? Arnold's nerve. Do you remember that? Yes, okay. Can pain from anterior 2/3 of the tongue, from this part of the tongue, can pain go to the ear? If there is ulcer of anterior 2/3 of the tongue, if there is carcinoma of anterior 2/3 of the tongue, can pain from here also be referred to the ear? Yes or no? Chorda tympani. No, chorda tympani is not for sensation. It is for taste. So can from here, from the anterior 2/3 pain go to the ear? Yes or no? This is a check of whether you have revised or not. We did this in the ear also. Yes. Does any part of the ear, is any part of the ear supplied by a first arch nerve? Yes, the mandibular branch, auriculotemporal. What is the nerve supply of the pinna? Goa, G-O-A-A. Yes, and the external auditory canal is the last two A's of Goa. The two A's, what is that? Auriculotemporal and auricular branch of vagus. So auriculotemporal is a branch of mandibular. Lingual is also a branch of mandibular. So yes, pain from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue also can go to the ear. Yes, so here also it can go to the ear. Yes, here it can go through the mandibular, or whatever is given in your choice, lingual. Yes, or auriculotemporal, whatever is given in your choice, you can mark that as the answer. Which means this is a very, very important thing that you need to remember. Yes, it is very frequently asked. Sometimes they give that in the question that pain in a patient of carcinoma of anterior 2/3 of the tongue is being referred to the ear. It is through which nerve? Sometimes it is asked that in carcinoma of the base of tongue, pain is referred to the ear through which nerve? Yes, so now what you think is that, okay, somewhere the answer is given lingual, somewhere the answer is given glossopharyngeal, somewhere the answer is given vagus. So what exactly is the answer? We are totally confused. Now, can you see now that there is nothing to get confused at all? All these nerves which supply the tongue also supply the ear. Yes, so pain from any part of the tongue can go to the ear, but that is through different nerves. If it goes from the anterior tooth of the tongue, it goes through which nerve? Quickly tell me, which nerve? Yes, through lingual. If it goes from the base of tongue, from the posterior 1/3, from the anterior part of the posterior 1/3, then it goes through which nerve? Glossopharyngeal. If it goes from the posterior most part of the tongue, it is going through which nerve? Then it is going through the vagus. Now, suppose it is asked that in a patient of carcinoma base of tongue, pain is referred to the ear. This is through which nerve? And both glossopharyngeal and vagus are there in the choice. What will you mark then? Both 9th and 10th are there in the choice. What will you mark then? Think and tell me. Yes, what will you mark? Yes, you will mark 9th. Why? Yes, because most of the base of tongue, most of the posterior 1/3 is from the third arch. It is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. Is that absolutely clear? So now let us quickly write this down. So anterior two-third of the tongue, sensory, we have done, that is by the lingual. That is by the lingual. Taste is by chorda tympani. And if it is, can it be referred to the ear? Yes, it can be referred through the lingual. Right? Posterior 1/3 of the tongue. Posterior 1/3 of the tongue is mainly, right? Mainly posterior 1/3 of the tongue. The sensory is by 9th. Taste is also by 9th. Now this is a revision for you. You are going to tell me the answer before I write down. Can it be referred to the ear? Yes or no? Yes, through 9th. Tell me the tympanic branch of glossopharyngeal. What is the name of the tympanic branch of glossopharyngeal? The branch of the 9th nerve that supplies the ear has been given a separate name. Yes, the Jacobson's nerve. Do you remember that? Yes, so always revise. Posterior most part of the tongue, sensory. Tell me sensory. Sensory is by, what should I write here? Yes, 10th. Taste, again 10th. Refer to the ear, yes or no? Yes, again that is by the 10th nerve, the vagus. Which nerve? Arnold's nerve, yes. Circumvallate papillae. Circumvallate papillae is through 9th nerve. Circumvallate papillae, everything is through the 9th nerve. 9th nerve. Muscles of the tongue are derived from occipital somites, occipital myotomes, and they are supplied by which nerve? They are supplied by the hypoglossal, that is the 12th. Except for palatoglossus, this is supplied by the pharyngeal plexus, that is mainly by the 10th. We'll see pharyngeal plexus later on in detail. Don't worry about it now. Okay. So that is just because we are doing the tongue. So I cannot just tell you that all the muscles are by the hypoglossal. Yes. Palatoglossus is not by the hypoglossal. It is by the pharyngeal plexus. Right. Now when you remember this, and yes, this is a very frequently asked question. Now when you are given this picture, yes, what you are seeing is that there is some abnormality of the tongue. Yes, there is a paralysis of the hypoglossal nerve. So now you are going to answer two things when you see this picture. First, which side palsy? Which side palsy is this? Is this the right side palsy? Right, or is this the left side palsy? Yes, right or left? Yes, it is the left palsy. It is the left palsy. So in the hypoglossal nerve palsy, the tongue is deviated to the side of the palsy. So it is deviated towards the side of the palsy. Yes, usually what we see is that whenever there is a facial nerve palsy, suppose of the right side, then deviation of the lip will be on which side? The normal side. Whenever the patient smiles, what will happen? This facial muscles are not working. So the angle of lip will be pulled to the side, the muscles of which are functioning. Whereas here in hypoglossal palsy, if there is a palsy of one side, then the tongue will be pushed to the paralyzed side. Yes. This is one thing that you need to know. Second thing was a question very recently in your exam, that in a patient of hypoglossal nerve palsy of the right side, the tongue is being pushed towards the right. This is because of which muscle? This is because of the action of which muscle? Yes, then you think that, okay, hypoglossal palsy. So what is left is palatoglossus. So the answer should be palatoglossus. Is the answer palatoglossus? Where is palatoglossus? It is behind, between the palate and the tongue. If it will contract, what it will do? It will bring the palate and the tongue together. Will it ever lead to the protrusion of the tongue? It is not going to help in protrusion of the tongue at all. So why is that going to make the tongue move on any side on protruding the tongue out? So no, it is not that. Then what is the answer? Yes, the answer is Genioglossus. Why genioglossus? Yes, now just see here, the genioglossus of the right side. It helps. Genioglossus is present anteriorly when it contracts. Yes, what it does, it not only protrudes the tongue, it also pushes the tongue to the opposite side, which means in the right side, the genioglossus will protrude the tongue also, and it will also push the tongue to the opposite side. So that is why in this patient, on the right side, the hypoglossal nerve is functioning normally. So that will make the tongue on protrusion, means when the genioglossus is functioning, on protruding the tongue, that will move towards the paralyzed side, because the genioglossus is protruding the tongue and pushing it to the opposite side, whereas on the opposite side the muscle is paralyzed. Is that very clear? So it is pushed in left palsy. So in hypoglossal nerve palsy, the deviation of tongue is to the weak side due to genioglossus. Is that very clear? So each and every part of this has been a question of your exam, and you cannot mistake it. Yes, and that was not difficult. That was very simple, right? Okay, so now this is a quick revision for you. Yes, keep your pens down. Yes, quickly tell me, if there is any ulcer on the anterior tooth of the tongue, can pain be referred to the ear? Yes, from here, anterior tooth of the tongue, can pain be referred to the ear? Yes or no? Through which nerve? Yes, through the lingual. In posterior most part of the tongue, of the base of the tongue, posterior most part of the base of the tongue, carcinoma, pain is referred to the ear through the vagus. In base of tongue carcinoma, not mentioned anterior posterior, just it is given that base of tongue carcinoma, not mentioned anterior part of base of tongue or posterior part. Yes, pain is referred to the ear through the glossopharyngeal. Yes, the anterior tooth of the tongue is derived from which arch? From the first arch. Circumvallate papilla is supplied by which nerve? Yes, by the ninth nerve. The muscles of the tongue are derived from occipital somites. What is the motor nerve supply of the tongue? Motor nerve supply is by hypoglossal, except for which muscle is not supplied by hypoglossal? Palatoglossus. In this patient, there is palsy of which side? Hypoglossal. Which side? Right or left? Quickly tell me which side? Yes, to the left side, because the tongue always deviates towards the paralyzed side. And this deviation is because of which muscle? Yes, because of genioglossus of the normal side. That was a very little part, but yes, a very, very important part of the tongue that we need to know. Now, starting with the anatomy of the pharynx. Now, the pharynx is a musculofacial tube. It is a tube made of fascia and muscles. And this extends from the base of skull above to the lower border of cricoid below. To the lower border of cricoid lower border below. Now, this is divided into three parts. Depending upon what it lies posterior to, it is named accordingly. So, the part of the pharynx that lies posterior to the nasal cavity is what is known as nasopharynx. The part of the pharynx which lies behind the oral cavity is what is known as oropharynx, whereas the part of the pharynx that lies behind the larynx is what is known as the laryngopharynx. Is that clear? So, this is the nasopharynx. This is the oropharynx, and this is the laryngopharynx. Right? Now, the middle part of the pharynx is the oropharynx. So, the part of the pharynx above that, what is that? The nasopharynx. This is also known as epipharynx. Yes, we know epi means what? Epi means above. When we say epitympanum, yes, that is the uppermost part of tympanic cavity. When we say epistaxis, epi means, yes, it is coming from above. So, this is known as epipharynx, whereas the part of the pharynx that lies below the oropharynx, that is the laryngopharynx, is also known as hypopharynx. Why? Because it lies below the oropharynx, so it is known as hypopharynx. Now, before we start with anything of the pharynx, now we need to understand exactly what the pharynx is. Now, the pharynx is a tube like this. It is exactly like this. Whatever picture we see, whenever we see the picture of the pharynx, as I showed you also. So, what is that? That is the pharynx that has been cut from the midline, and what you are seeing is only one half. Yes, one half is being shown to you and the other half has been cut. But actually it is a tube. It is a musculofacial tube like this. Yes, it is broad above and it goes on narrowing inferiorly. It is a musculofacial tube that is fitted from the base of skull to the lower border of the cricoid, and it is fitted in the skull behind the nasal cavity, behind the oral cavity, and behind the larynx. So this part that is behind the nasal cavity in the skull, that is what is the nasopharynx. Behind the oral cavity, that is the oropharynx, and behind the larynx, that is what is laryngopharynx. And what is the function of this tube? Now let us quickly see that. So what I just showed you and what I just told you was that in the skull, so what we have in front of us is the skull. Now in the skull is only, the bones are only till here. Yes. So in the skull, behind the nose, behind the oral cavity and behind the larynx, yes, is this tube fitted? Is this tube, complete tube fitted? So this part which is behind the nasal cavity is what is known as the nasopharynx. Behind the oral cavity is what is the oropharynx, and behind the larynx is what is the laryngopharynx, right? So yes, we are fitting it into the skull. So here we have the oral cavity. This is the oral cavity. This is the nasal cavity. So here, when this tube made of fascia and muscles will be fitted, this part we will call as oropharynx. This part we will call as nasopharynx. So why is this tube fitted there? Why is this tube fitted there? Yes, why is this tube fitted there is to act as a connecting channel. In the skull, we just saw that we have the nose, we have the oral cavity, we have the larynx below. Now, what is connecting them and why do we need to connect them? Whenever we are breathing, the air which we are breathing is going inside through the nose, and ultimately where does it have to go? It has to go from the nose into the lungs. Into the lungs, through the trachea, through the larynx, and then to the trachea and into the lungs. Yes. And also when we are eating, the food that we are eating through the oral cavity, then it has to go into the esophagus. Yes, so this pharynx acts as a connecting channel between the nose and the larynx, between the oral cavity and the esophagus. Is that clear? So that now when we are breathing, we have a channel through which from the nose, when the air is going, it can go through the pharynx and then it can enter into the larynx and then the trachea and then the lungs, right? Similarly, whenever we are eating, now the food that we are eating through the oral cavity, now to go into the esophagus, we have a connecting channel, that is the oropharynx and the hypopharynx, which will make it pass, which will now deliver the food that has come out from the oral cavity into the esophagus. Is that very clear? So yes, it is a tube like this. It is a connecting tube, and this is exactly like this, a conical tube, an inverted cone which is dilated towards the up and narrow. It is narrowed towards the down. I will just show you that. So don't think that this is a tube like this, which is a straight tube like this. Yes, it is conical. That is a question of your exam. And this is connecting the nasal cavity to the larynx and the oral cavity to the esophagus. Is that very clear? So what we are seeing here in this picture is a sagittal cut section where we are seeing one half of the nose, nasal cavity, one half of the oral cavity, and yes, also one half of this pharyngeal tube. So this part behind the nasal cavity, which is the nasopharynx, this part is the nasopharynx, and we know that the posterior border of the nasal cavity is the posterior border of the turbinates. So suppose this here is the lateral wall of the nose. What are the structures in the lateral wall of nose? Yes, we have the three turbinates, the superior, middle and the inferior turbinate. The lateral wall of nose ends at the posterior border of the turbinates. Behind that, the lateral wall of nose extends to form the lateral wall of nasopharynx, right? So this is the nasopharynx, and this is bounded superiorly by the base of skull. Inferiorly, we have the palate, and it lies opposite the first cervical vertebrae. Now below that is the oropharynx, that is behind the oral cavity. So this is the oropharynx here, and this is bounded in between the 2H. What is the 2H? The hard palate above and the hyoid below. So we have the hard palate here, and below it extends up till here, that is the hyoid, and it lies opposite with cervical vertebra C2 and upper part of C3. Whereas the hypopharynx, that extends from the hyoid to the lower border of cricoid. Yes, these boundaries are important. So it extends from the hyoid to the lower border of the cricoid, and it lies behind the larynx, and it lies opposite C3, lower border of C3, C4, C5 and C6 cervical vertebrae. So it lies opposite C3, 4, 5, 6 cervical vertebrae. So now quickly write this down. So now I have already told you, you are going to now tell me. What you tell me, I will write that. Yes, the nasopharynx, that is also known as the epipharynx. Yes, what's the upper boundary of the nasopharynx? Yes, it is the base of skull, and inferiorly it is the palate. Inferiorly, whatever is given in your choice, hard palate or soft palate, you can mark that. And it lies opposite the cervical vertebrae, C1. Oropharynx, upper boundary is, yes, tell me, it is the 2H. What's 2H? Hard palate, hard palate, hard palate to the hyoid, and it lies opposite C2 and upper part of C3. Whereas the laryngopharynx or the hypopharynx, yes, it extends from the hyoid to the lower border of cricoid, and this lies opposite C3, 4, 5, 6 cervical vertebrae. Now that you know what the pharynx is, what the parts of the pharynx are, now can you tell me that if we want to see the structures of the nasopharynx, that is behind the nasal cavity, how can we see it? Yes, how can we see it? That is not something which is very easily accessible to us. Similarly, if we want to see the laryngopharynx, that is the hypopharynx, again that is behind the larynx, how can we visualize that? So oropharynx is the only part that we can see very, very clearly in our routine almost every day. We can see it very nicely. But if we want to see the nasopharynx or the hypopharynx, how can we see it? Yes, we can see it with the help of mirrors or with the help of, yes, the endoscopes. Nowadays we use endoscope. But yes, very commonly is asked that if you want to see the nasopharynx, yes, then which type of mirror will you use? These are the two types of mirrors. Yes, one is for seeing the hypopharynx and the larynx. One is for seeing the nasopharynx. Yes, so when we see the nasopharynx, which one will you use? And when we want to see the hypopharynx, which one will you use? Yes, can you see the difference? Yes, one you can see that it is tilted anteriorly also, and yes, there is two tilt, whereas this one is straight. Yes. So you want to see the nasopharynx, pick one of these. Which one will you choose? Yes, both these are the mirrors. One is for seeing the posterior part of the nose, so that is known as posterior rhinoscopy mirror, and one is for seeing the larynx and the hypopharynx, so that is the indirect laryngoscopy mirror. So now can you just pick up? Yes, very good. The one that we choose for seeing the nasopharynx or posterior rhinoscopy is this one. Yes, the one which has two tilt. Why does it have two tilt? Yes, now just see here carefully. Yes, this has to be passed from the oral cavity behind the uvula. Now can you see, if it was straight, it will directly touch the tongue. It will touch the tongue. If it will touch the tongue, and if it is not bent here also, it will touch the palate also. So it needs to be bent at two places, at one here and the second is at this place, so that it does not touch the tongue, it does not touch the palate, and the patient does not gag when you are doing this. So the one which has two tilt, that is the posterior rhinoscopy mirror. And also just see here that what is asked in your exam is that whenever you are doing posterior rhinoscopy, yes, you need to identify which one is the mirror that you will use. Second, what you need to know is that when you are doing a posterior rhinoscopy, will you depress the tongue? Will you depress the tongue? Yes or no? Yes, we can see that if it goes straight, even if it is tilted here, it will always be better that if we depress the tongue, this tongue will go down. So we have enough space to go over the tongue and then behind the soft palate. So we always depress the tongue. Yes, so just see here, we use this tongue depressor to depress the tongue, and then we hold this posterior rhinoscopy mirror. Please see, in the form of a pen. These are just very minute things, but nowadays the things have become so practical that they ask you all these things. So it is held like this in the form of a pen, and once you depress the tongue, now you pass it behind the uvula. Behind the uvula, as you can see here, the tongue has been depressed. So now it is not coming in our view, and we are passing it behind the uvula to see the structures of the nasopharynx. Yes, we can know that yes, this is a very difficult procedure, and how much we'll be able to see in the mirror? Yes, very little. But when we did not have the endoscope, we did not have any other option. Nowadays, when we want to see it, what we do is we do a nasal endoscopy. Right now, when we want to see the hypopharynx, yes, we use the straight mirror, that is the indirect laryngoscopy mirror. Why laryngoscopy? Because at the same time we are also seeing the larynx. So we see the larynx and hypopharynx by this procedure. And just note one difference here. Here we are not depressing the tongue, and this is one thing that is asked from you, and then you keep repeatedly asking from me that why the tongue is not depressed here. Now where do we want to put the mirror when we want to see lower down? Yes, normally our tongue, the base of tongue is resting behind. Yes, it is going behind here. So we want this part behind the tongue to be clear. That area is the one where we want to put the mirror to see the structures below that. Now, if the base of the tongue is quite behind, then the base of tongue will occlude our view of the larynx and the hypopharynx. So that is why we pull out the tongue. We do not keep the tongue inside the mouth and depress it. Yes, we are not depressing it. We do not want to go above it that we are depressing it. We want to go behind it. So we are pulling it out. So just see here, we are pulling out the tongue, and then so that we get enough space behind the base of tongue so that we can pass this indirect laryngoscopy mirror behind the tongue. So nowadays what we do is again endoscopy, but again, even if you are doing endoscopic examination to visualize the hypopharynx, yes, you know that how you will do. You will have to pull out the tongue, because if the tongue is back, that will occlude your view of the larynx and the hypopharynx. Is that very clear? So keep your pens down. Yes, what is the lower limit of the pharynx? Complete pharynx. What is the lower limit? Yes, the lower border of cricoid. What is the upper limit of the nasopharynx? Base of skull. The upper limit of the oropharynx. Oropharynx is hyoid. The upper limit of the hypopharynx is the hyoid. Yes, the hyoid is the lower limit of the oropharynx and the upper limit of the hypopharynx. The hypopharynx lies opposite which cervical vertebrae? See, 3, 4, 5, 6 cervical vertebrae. What is the shape of the pharynx? Yes, it is in the form of an inverted cone. So what we need to know in the pharynx anatomy is, yes, we first need to understand what we have understood here, that what exactly this tube is and what is it for. Yes, so this tube acts as a connecting channel between the nose and the larynx and between the oral cavity and the esophagus. Yes, so what we need to know is what are the structures that are present in the cavity. This is the cavity of the pharynx. So what are the structures in the cavity of the pharynx? What is the significance of the cavity of the pharynx? We need to know this complete entire wall of the pharynx and the significance of the wall of the pharynx. We need to know what are the spaces around the pharynx. So there are multiple spaces around the pharynx, and all of them can get infected, and that can lead to very dangerous deep neck space abscesses. So that is what we need to know in the pharynx, and we will do them separately as one module.